Welcome everybody to our panel discussion. We have a great lineup of speakers here with me, representatives from several CSPs, as well as some industry organizations, the HomeGrid Forum and the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance. So that'll prove for some interesting discussions. Just starting from my side over, we have Thormorten Osmundsen, the CEO of Altibox. We have Matthew Hare, CEO of Zoom. We have Wim Boekenoge, the Core and Communication Solution Division Lead at Proximus. Then we have Livia Rosu, President of the HomeGrid Forum. And finally, but not least, of course, as always, Martha Suarez, the President of the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance. So welcome, everyone, our speakers and also our audience. Now, before the opening statement of my panelists, I also would like to introduce you briefly to the topic of today, in-home broadband excellence, and what that means for us today. And it's really, probably most of you by now, I hope, know about in-home broadband excellence committee of the Fiber to the Home Council. We got started almost a year ago, so we're still relatively new. And the topic is to recognize the fact that, as it says, the days when broadband connectivity was just a simple modem or router to hand over the connection to the consumer have long been gone. Everybody knows that it's not so easy now, and people want more. Of course, Wi-Fi is one of the big topics. All the consumer equipment supports Wi-Fi. And also the end-user requirements on the experience are higher than ever. I guess the whole COVID situation that happened a couple of years ago now kind of triggered everybody to realize how important broadband is to remain connected. And people hate to be tethered to their equipment. It's good to be free and be able to roam around. So one question you can ask is, well, is it getting more complex in the home? For sure. There's maybe more equipment required to get this broadband delivered everywhere in the home. So the risk is that it sounds a little bit like we need more investment and it becomes more complicated, and that's just not very nice. But there are also new revenue opportunities. And there the question is really also, how can we unlock those opportunities? We see some examples in the market, but still a long way to go as well. And one example there that I wanted to mention is the Broadband Forum, where there's a service provider action council. So it's really the service providers, and they say, you know, we are missing something here for these new services. So there's a new initiative going on there. And it just shows us that even though we have standards, we have implementations, there are examples out there, there's still more work to be done. So it's not a solved topic yet. In our in-home broadband excellence committee, we've divided this complex puzzle into 3 parts. First, we start with the foundation, how to extend the fiber performance to the end device. So we know you have fiber to the home, that's great. We have more and more of that in Europe. But how do you get that performance that you now have to the home? How do you get that to the end device so the user can really use this powerful broadband everywhere they want? So that's the foundation of it. We need infrastructure. Then the second question is, how do you manage the user experience? Because you need to be able to monitor, troubleshoot what's going on, especially when the infrastructure becomes more complicated. So it's a very important pillar as well, on top of the infrastructure. And then finally, when you have all of that in order, you have good infrastructure, you have good management, you can see what's going on in the home, you can control it where it's needed, then you can really start to think about how can you add value to it and monetize all these wonderful new services that we've been promised. And that's where you create your additional revenue. And that brings us to the topic of today. Really the question, how do you deliver this new broadband excellence inside the home? And a question that will come up, there are so many in-home infrastructure possibilities. Do the CSPs actually use these and deal with the complexity, or are they trying to keep it simple and kind of stick to mostly just CAT cables and Wi-Fi deployment? How do they know that it actually works? What are they doing with management? And how, especially also interesting, of course, looking forward, because the in-home broadband excellence is not a solved problem yet, how is this evolving in the next few years? Not just the Wi-Fi evolution from Wi-Fi 6 to 6E and 7, but also this service integration and delivery. So that was my short introduction, and I would like to hand it over to Thormorten for point of view.
Yes, thank you. My name is Tor Morten Osmundsen. I'm the CEO of Altibox. Altibox is owned by Lyse, which is a energy company owned by 16 municipalities in the region of southwestern Norway. And we have built a company and a partnership with about 30 partners all over Norway, where we provide the services, both internet and TV, and the local companies build the infrastructure, and we provide the end service to the end customers. 20 years ago, Lyse, then the owner, and now Altibox, decided to use fiber for the in-home to bring the communication to the homes. And the fiber was used in an energy communication between the gridding systems and so forth. And the company decided to go for the fiber also start a new venue with telecom. And we will probably we are now the largest fiber access in Norway, and we'll probably pass Telenor as the largest fixed broadband provider this year. And you can imagine Norway, it's pretty troublesome to find, to meet and to target all the different local regions. And of course, how we can use and how we can optimize with our local partners is really a nice partnership. The good thing is that we have won the independent customer satisfaction survey 12 years on a row, both for internet and TV. And I think, and that is not really something to sleep on, because the scores that we have achieved are really in the range of 70-75%, and we should be beyond the 80. We should really reach beyond the 80 from customer satisfaction point of view. That's where the customers are coming from the mobile operators, from the bank services, traveling services, paying services. So we need to step up our service levels to our customers. That's where we stand. That's what we are really aiming for, both on internet as well as the TV services. Now, the next step we are going for now is our promise now we're working for is that how can we as a company provide a better digital everyday life, and including everybody, making sure there's not a digital divide in the society. And then we meet from south to north in Norway. So the challenge then in the homes, because the fiber is of course not the end goal, it's the means to reach to the homes, and then we need to optimize the customer journey in the homes. And we need to, as a service provider, to give that confidence and to give that service that the customers expect, which is very much different to what it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, before the pandemic. And this is something we really look into. How can we really step up that? We have done some really nice and important experiences and surveys, and we're now preparing how can we take that role, and how can we play together with the suppliers, the partners, to meet those future requirements. Because I really think we need to step up as the one that has the competence and to provide the safety. We need to make sure that the Wi-Fi mesh setup is more or less how to put your toaster into the kitchen. It's an easy connection, it's an easy guidance with good self-service provision for the customers. And then they must make sure that they feel safe and comfort using our services. So I'm really we're looking for how can we make this service both, how can we make a complexity, how can we make technology easy to use, simple, standardized, which we can scale up, which we can provide services to, which we can expand and deliver upon with more services. That's really what we are aiming for. So we are now developing which we'll come a little bit back to, a services provision guaranteeing a certain point of customer experience. So I think that's what I want to say about Altibox.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear Matthew.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Hare from Zoom. We build new fibre networks in the UK in market towns. And I just want to share with you a little bit of research we did in December. So this is into a town that we'd finished a year before, finished building the fibre network. And this is research that we did to the 75% of homes that hadn't yet moved to full fibre. And these are the reasons they gave in order of importance. The first one, which I think is going to be a really interesting one for today, is, I don't have fiber, I have Wi-Fi. A level of understanding amongst most people who aren't interested in technology is they have no idea how the technology actually gets to their home. And this whole thing is, I've got Wi-Fi, and where you talked to me about fiber was, I think, very interesting. So I know we're all very familiar with the technology, but the people who we're trying to serve, for many of them, they really have no idea what we're talking about because they think what they experience is Wi-Fi. The second one was, but I've had fiber for the last 10 years because the marketing in the UK, people have been allowed to call pretty much anything you want fiber. You could take your mobile phone out and call that a fiber phone. The way the rules are written, it means that as long as at least 90% of the network you're using uses fiber, you can call it fiber. So your mobile phone is a fiber phone. You might be surprised to hear that if you're at this conference, but that's the way the ad rules work in the UK. So the next big question was, well, what is it that you're doing is different? Because I've already got fiber. I've been told for the last 10 years I've had fiber. What is it that you're actually talking about, and why does it make any difference to me? The third one is something that obviously the bigger network operators, in fact, Altibox do themselves. You put people into a contract or you put people into a bundle of services, and that makes them stickier, makes them less keen to change any one component. Nothing wrong with that, but that was the third reason why people hadn't moved off their fiber to the cabinet service onto a full fiber service. The fourth one was actually, I need a phone line. So in the UK, we're 2 and a bit years away from PSTN switch off, as in, there will be no exchange-powered phone lines in 2 and a bit years in the UK. All of them will be, you'll have to have an ATA, and you'll be using making your phone calls. If you're using a landline, it'll be going over the internet. But still 10% of the people who hadn't purchased full fiber said the reason they weren't going to do it is because they didn't want to lose their phone line. And they were convinced that that was going to be an outcome for them. And the fifth one was actually offers and prices. So it's very interesting if you're doing marketing into why people buy and don't buy. But for the people who aren't that keen, there's some very interesting drivers there. I think in terms of our network, I don't think we're doing anything particularly exciting. We use XGS-PON. We actually also do point-to-point over the same infrastructure. We deliver Wi-Fi 5 today for a good in-home experience. We're just starting to deliver Wi-Fi 6 devices into the home, which I personally believe is going to give a massively improved consumer experience because of its ability to manage different devices on different channels at different power levels. And of course, we also deliver extenders. So we're basically, a pretty standard network deployment, nothing that exciting. But in terms of giving people what they want, we're delivering a very high level of availability. So this is not a business service, this is consumer services, and this is measuring minutes of outage across all of our customers each month. So, better than 99.94% all the time. Sorry, better than 99.994% all the time, which is very high level of availability. And that's because people do, of course, as we all know, live on the fiber as soon as they get it. And that means you need to be thinking about how you're measuring what you're doing all the way across your business, from when you're building the network to installing it to provisioning services and then to running them afterwards and maintaining them afterwards. So if you want to give people a great consumer experience that then feeds back into them being very sticky customers who will stay with you a long time, there's a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Wim Boekenoge, and don't worry, even for Belgian people, it is a difficult family name. But I'm not here to talk about my name. I'm here to talk about Proximus, and Proximus is the incumbent Belgian operator offering the full range of mobile and fixed telco products, entertainment solutions, as well as ICT products. We also have activities in the Netherlands and in Luxembourg, but our main activity, of course, is Belgium. Before I'll zoom into the in-home activities that we are developing, but let me start from the strategy of Proximus, and it gives a good introduction into our home ambitions. It is An important pillar of our strategy is building the best gigabit networks for Belgium. So we talk about networks, meaning that we are deploying 5G in Belgium. In terms of, we have mobile leadership, so it was very important for us to also be the first one in 5G and to further deploy 5G in a good pace, but also in terms of fiber. We started, you can say, relatively late in fiber in Belgium, but now we are adding about 10% of coverage per year and deploying a network which will be 10 gig ready. Our current offer is still a 1 gig offer on our fiber network, but by the end of the year, we have the ambition to launch also multi-gig offers. So we built that multi-gig network infrastructure, which also will be an open infrastructure. There were a lot of debates of filling up your network as much as possible. That's also part of our strategy. Building these networks, we don't do that alone. We do that in partnerships as well for the mobile part, where in fact we team up together with one of our competitors we have a joint access network, a joint venture that enables us to roll out faster the 5G in Belgium and also at a more competitive cost. But also, I think the main partnerships are situated in the fiber activities, where part of the deployments we do it standalone, but also part of the fiber deployments are done in a joint venture setup, where we work together with fiber infrastructure companies. And there's one for the north, it's called Fiberklaar, and there's one for the south of the country, which is called Unifiber. But so we have this quite ambitious gigabit networks ambitious in Belgium. And of course, it makes no sense to build good gigabit networks if your in-home experience is not up to the same level. So our current offering for in-home solutions is a high-performance gateway, which has been launched 2nd of May, so it's very new. A 1 gig gateway with Wi-Fi 6 as a mainstream gateway, and so by the end of the year, we will also offer a premium gateway offering the 10 gigabit, and which will also have the Wi-Fi 6E on board. In terms of in-home experiences, so we have the gateway that can be extended through boosters. So it's a managed and extendable Wi-Fi coverage, offering all the kinds of Wi-Fi optimization, seamless band steering, channel selection, and then Wi-Fi boosters with easy mesh capabilities, so that you really can cascade from booster to cover the whole in-home situation. The support we offer to our customers is the whole range of support, starting from the digital offering with different features in the My Proximus app. People can really use that app to find out the best place in the house where a booster has to be installed, can check the devices that are connected, can check non-supported devices or non-supported extenders that are in the network. So that's the digital, more self-service activities. Next to that, we have also a quite elaborated monitoring and visibility functionality in our call centers. So if a customer calls in with a Wi-Fi problem, we have a good visibility on the in-home situation, and we can make recommendations to the customer how to solve an issue or how to improve the situation. Up to the point where the situations are more difficult, we can plan what we call a happy house visit. That's one of our technicians that goes to the customer to check the full end-to-end situation of the house and make sure that not only the access is okay, but also the in-home coverage is okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will start by saying thank you so much for spending the time here with the permission of Martin. Thank you so much, because it's really an important day for the FTTH Council conference, and it's late in the afternoon, and you all had a very busy week. So we do all appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join us this afternoon and listen to us. I do represent the HomeGrid Forum, which is the industry alliance for system vendors, network operators, silicon providers, and system vendors, OEM, ODMs, that do join their forces for deploying an ITUT standard called GHN. But it all started with a user experience back in 2009 as an international standard developed by ITU. Initially was addressing the needs of the telecom industry, which is home networking. It was home networking back then, trying to use the cables inside the house. And this was a vision that actually continued for all these years, in a way of having the power line initially, then the coax and twisted pairs, embracing the pace of the deployments. Why I'm saying that? Because, of course, as the technology name GHN might not ring a bell to all of you, it has been, throughout all these years, a backbone, a powerful backbone for enabling other applications, for enabling, above all, robust connectivity for Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, of course, does provide us all this freedom of movement and the latest and the nicest user experience, and it's very important that on the user side, the process is transparent. The user, and again, it's really a matter of how do you look at this. I come from a telecommunications engineering background, but we have to look at this from the user experience. We shouldn't worry too much about what's the technology behind. We have to think of the technology is there, wired or wireline. It is wireless. It is combined. It's really segmentation of the network providing the street quality of service. And actually, we call that quality of experience. This is how we should look at it. It has been GHN as such as ever since standardized by ITU, a technology that addresses, as I said, initially home networking topologies, but then went into the broadband access. What does that mean? It's really helping or working hand in hand with fiber companies that are wishing to accelerate broadband deployments, FTTH as we know it, and really sometimes the fiber stops in some other places. We call it in the Broadband Forum the fiber to the most economical point, FTTP. And part of that, we have to link the network all the way to the user's home using some of the existing cables. In this case, it was a phone line or coax. But then really went beyond that to do apply electric utility applications, smart grid, industrial IoT in the smart factories, and Li-Fi, which is combining the frequency spectrum with the Li-Fi spectrum, yet another challenge, converting every single LED bulb in an access point, which is bringing yet another dimension. So the HomeGrid Forum as such is helping the industry with a multi-gigabit, so we all need multi-gigabit, but above all, multi-vendor applicability and interoperability. What does that mean? It is combining all these different devices. It's a safe bet for network operators so that they can buy these devices from any system integrator, any system manufacturer, regardless of the silicon technology embedded, so that they can all combine this in a nice networking way with all these different protocols embedded and have reliable connectivity. Just very quickly, because what I like about Austria is to keep everything on track, just a quick snapshot of GHN for Quality of Experience, one of the members of the association that is explaining how the connectivity is getting from the gateway, from the set-top box, all the way to every single corner of the house, and especially if it is multi-layers, like single-family units that you'd have, or duplex apartments that you need in any corner. And yet another one, which is delivering the fiber speed to the center of the home without having to drill. We call that drill less, connect more. So it's really getting into the direction of reusing, to some extent, some of the cables that are already inside the house, supporting FTTH by all means, because this is the vision of the industry. Make sure we have Wi-Fi embedded on all these different platforms. And again, we can then spend some time working about the Wi-Fi mesh and what does it mean, how the topology and how the software knows to combine all these different nice applications and algorithms. Many thanks for your time. I hand over to Marta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Livia, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marta Suarez. I am the president of the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance. And the first question I think you should be asking yourself is like, what is Spectrum Alliance doing in an FTTH conference, right? And I will address one important aspect of connectivity, especially from the customer's perspective, and it's the last mile connectivity. And as you know, many of us are using devices that are wireless, and they are relying on Wi-Fi. So DSA also, for those of you that are not familiar, we are a global organization, and we promote dynamic spectrum access, and in particular, more spectrum for Wi-Fi. So the previous speakers really made a great introduction to the subject. Like, we rely on Wi-Fi for connectivity, and many stakeholders give it for granted. We are used to see Wi-Fi everywhere. May I ask you here how many of you are connected to the Wi-Fi network? Can you please raise your hand? That's pretty clear. In the first page of the event, we had the password of the Wi-Fi network. So that's really how many of us connect all the time. However, in order to make sure that we have the performance that is expected combined with the performance of the fiber, we need to use the last generations of Wi-Fi and to make sure that Wi-Fi is really updated. So Wi-Fi industry has been growing. Now we have heard about Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, and there is an ecosystem growing, but it's important to take actions to make sure that we can really provide the best service to customers. So COVID also shows something important, is the amount of traffic. We have much more traffic at fixed connections. It's important, it's combining with so many technologies, and it's easy to deploy. It's available in most of the devices. We usually, in terms of a spectrum, we see value of a spectrum when it goes through an auction. You know, like there is an auction, people get paid for the spectrum, and then you know how much it's worth. However, Wi-Fi is based on license XM access. There is an important economic value of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi Alliance has estimated that value, and you can see the numbers here. It's constantly growing, and we talk about billion US dollars for the European economy. So it's in the order of $600 billion, and there are many sources of value. There are sources in terms of connectivity, public hotspots. Also, right now, there are new applications for AR, VR that will consume a good part of that traffic, but they will also create and generate value for the GDP, for consumers, and for producers. And I also refer a little bit to the last generations of Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi 6 is the current generation we are using, and Wi-Fi 6E refers to Wi-Fi 6 in the 6 gigahertz band. We expect to have Wi-Fi 7 certificated and available by 2024. However, we have been hearing about latest deployments in terms of chipsets, and even we had a press release today from a company that was showing their products, including Wi-Fi 7. The main performance that we are seeing in terms of new generations of Wi-Fi is the capacity to have larger bandwidths. So if you have larger bandwidths, it means more capacity, more throughput, lowest latency, and also we can have more and more devices connected. So that is an important part of the evolution. Wi-Fi will require additional spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band. Currently, we have the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz band, but they don't have the capability to really provide those channels of 320 megahertz that we expect in Wi-Fi 7, or not enough 160 channels for Wi-Fi 6E. So if we have this additional spectrum, then we will have more channels for dense environments like buildings or facilities with many users connected at the same time that will provide that capacity. So it's important, and also because many use cases will request that capability. So my final message here, and I'm really glad we can continue with the discussion after, is that if Europe really wants to provide the capacity, it's important to open the upper part of the 6 gigahertz band for license XM access. The current situation is not enough.
Thank you very much. So with that, if I can have the clicker back.
We were wondering.
Thank you very much for those introductions. I think it's very clear. We see, I guess everybody understands, we need more connectivity, more speed, but especially more quality and user experience. So this is very interesting. I think what's also interesting is yesterday there were some panels. One of them was on regulation, and I remember in the panel that I was visiting, they spoke a lot about regulation on the fiber access and some link to the older copper networks and what's happening and so on. But I think in the in-home part it's also very interesting. And one of the ways in which the networks in Europe are regulated is by what we call the free router choice, that consumers have freedom, depending a little bit on which is the handover point, to choose their own equipment in the home. And it's more obvious, of course, if you think about extenders and what else goes on the home, that end users can choose stuff. But of course, if an end user connects equipment that the CSP has no insight into, or is not under the control, it feels that it's nice on paper, it gives them freedom, but they become responsible for making it work. And we also heard end users are not set up to deal with the complexity. Matthew already said the consumer doesn't even think about fiber and broadband. They just think, I have Wi-Fi. And we cannot expect the end users to have to know everything and deal with everything. So I was wondering, with the in-home networks becoming more and more complex, it's interesting to consider what might happen with regulation or how it could help, or maybe what we could do to help. But first, maybe ask our CSPs whether the free router choice that is there today is something that affects what you do in practice. Maybe many customers, maybe only few customers ask for this to be able to do something by themselves. And I wonder, over time, do you think that people will choose to do more of this or less as the complexity grows? I don't know if anybody wants to open. Matthew?
Yeah, sure. So I think customers are not all the same. We have, technical customers who will definitely want to run their own networks, to run their own routers, and in very high-end houses, they'll actually have an IT consultant who's running their IT for them. So, they will want control. Many of them actually might want to actually put their own firewall in between the network and their home network to actually separate themselves from the network operator. We've already seen some stories in the UK of more technical users being concerned that the level of management that we want to provide to the less experienced and less capable home users means that we have access to their home router. And they're worried that if we have access to their home router, we can hack into their network and we can do whatever we want, which is completely true. So I think you need to divide the market into different types of customers. You're going to have one type of customer who's definitely going to want to look after their own equipment, and they're going to want tight control of their network. And then you have the vast majority of the rest who just want it to work all the time.
Yeah. So different types of users, you have to address the different types of users separately.
Yeah.
Tom Martin?
No, I completely the same opinion, and I think but more and more the letter group is expanding, and I think because the use is so extensive and it's expanding and it's all 24 hours, I think the more and more the consumers are now saying that I want an integrated service. You provide me with that connectivity that I expect in my home.
Is it? I wonder also, is it something that is complicated to deal with? This differentiation of different users. It would be nice to have a one-size-fits-all solution that you can offer.
So let me add that the vast majority of the customers really expect the operator to take care of the Wi-Fi coverage in the home. It is. In numbers, I think it's 40% of the calls coming into the call centers of internet problems are not internet problems, but are Wi-Fi problems. So the customers really expect that we have solutions to that we can help them, and so that's in terms of our activity, that's biggest, takes most of our time to deal with that. But then, indeed, more the high-end customers or the kind of geeks that want open ports, that want that do internet hosting in their home, so that they give some complexity and but I don't see that as a major issue. This kind of settings, I think you have to offer them to the customers.
Yep.
I don't see this as a major problem that creates inefficiencies in our network. So that's available. I think the biggest part of our effort now is making sure that customers that just want a good Wi-Fi coverage, that we as an operator can provide that Wi-Fi coverage as well.
Yeah. All right.
Can I just add one thing? I mean,
Sure.
in order to do that, you need to have access to their network, because you need to be able to see what's actually going on, what other devices are, what interference they're seeing from other sources. So it is an intrusive service we're providing from a sort of privacy point of view. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, because absolutely we do it, but it is different to people who are much more concerned about, I'm going to be doing online gaming and live streaming tonight from 8 p.m. CET, and I want to make sure that I've optimized my streams because the 250,000 people I'm expecting to watch on YouTube actually want to have a great experience, and therefore I don't want an operator potentially coming and playing around with my router in the middle of my money-making activity, which is actually streaming from home. So there are lots of these niche cases now that mean that people don't want this, they don't want the vanilla. They want to paint it whatever color they want.
It's interesting to see how this will develop with the complexity, because we have Livia with the G.hn, so it's also not just about you have a router and then you have Wi-Fi, but there might be other parts of infrastructure to be able to get from A to B inside the home everywhere. And I also think it's interesting to see what will happen here, because I think I had a discussion yesterday, and we were thinking this topic is called in-home broadband excellence. Mm-hmm. And in-home broadband is one thing. That's not so difficult necessarily, but the excellence part is then becomes the question: what can you do to make it excellent, and how much of this flexibility are you going to use, or do you need, or can you find ways around it? And it very much relates to the management of the network, to be able to see what's going on and offer more individualized solutions, if you will. Are there other parts on the regulatory areas? Because I know in some places you have this regulation that you need to prove the service. So if you sell gigabit to a customer, you need to be able to show it's really gigabit, the speed test kind of things. This, I guess, will also become more complicated as the in-home network grows in complexity, because where does the gigabit go? Does it really go to the end device? Any thoughts on this? What you do with it, or? Yeah?
If I may start, Martin, and then building a little bit on your previous question. We have seen this differently, and it's really like building a puzzle, especially because I represent a community of operators and system vendors, technology providers. So it's a challenge also to get aligned among themselves as such, and Marta knows that very well, but always with serving the user expectations. So we really had to look into segmenting the network, providing that broadband excellence and making it in a transparent way. Users don't really need to know whether that's the fiber stops at the gateway and when they take it on the power line or on the coax. It really goes to an access point. Oh, by the way, that has also Wi-Fi 6, and I can replace it with the Wi-Fi 7 next year. So this is always very nice for those that like to look into these details. And what really translates into this, and now that users can jump from one or change, softly said, from one service provider to another, it's the quality of experience itself. And we have been looking into algorithms that do this integration in a smooth way. So on the HomeGrid Forum side with the GHN, and it also applies for MoCA, for the MoCA technology, which is on the coax. So think of MoCA as a coax, and GHN has coax, phone line, power line, and plastic optical fiber, but they both provide a backbone for the Wi-Fi technology in a robust way, and then of course it's meant to be working with the fiber. What we have seen in the COVID times is the fact that users have lost their patience, and we all know, all of us. We don't want to wait, and that translates into the latency, technically speaking, or frustration, less technically speaking. But we all want it now. Every single thing we are doing, email downloading, video gaming, healthcare services, because we were forced staying at home too much, working from home, studying from home, and when this translates in those needs. What we have to make it happen, it is, and it's about initiatives like Purple Mesh and others that are looking into a smart way of differentiating between the front haul channels and the back haul channels when it's coming to Wi-Fi, so that each does its job in a way that is transparent and segmenting the network, combining the capabilities of every single this technology.
I think with this, I assume our audience knows of the front haul, back haul concepts also in the home environment. One interesting thing is, so you can put the backhaul on a separate medium, like G.hn, Mocha, cat cables, right?
Exactly.
Easy solution as well. Or this is where the Wi-Fi 6E can come in, where you have a separate radio, and then you need more spectrum, right? So we have some spectrum today for just doing client connectivity, but for the backhaul, you really need a good connection. Mm-hmm. Martha,
that goes for you.
How do you see the uptake of Wi-Fi 6E at the moment in Europe, or are people a little bit waiting for this new spectrum?
Well, Europe made a decision last year in June, and that was a European decision for the lower part of the band.
Yeah.
So there are 480 megahertz that have been dedicated for license XM access. The decision gave a timeline until December last year for administrations to implement that decision. However, some administrations are still in the process, so we are just seeing that adoption at a national level. So unfortunately, not all the European countries have the regulations in place. So that's why one of the reasons.
A quick question about that, because I think they were supposed to have 6 months or so to get that done, right?
Exactly. So
but
it was from
done.
June, and they had until December. But for example, we have Austria or Luxembourg that haven't implemented the decision yet. Some countries made the consultation, and then they are implementing it at the national level. So what we are seeing now is like the normal process of adoption. And for those that are familiar with spectrum activities, this is a really long-term activity because we are targeting now the digital decade path, and we are expecting by 2030 to have 1 gigabit per second for every household. So we say, okay, 2030 is still far. But we need administrations to consider the importance of opening the entire band, because there will be an European discussion, there will be time for decision, and then there will be implementations in the countries. And then you have also the normal process of homologation of equipment, and then you need to have them in the market to really start seeing them at the households.
Yeah, okay. Matthew, you want to
Well, I just
something?
wanted to say something else about, before we move on from regulation, there's the indirect regulation that impacts our industry as well. In particular, everything to do with insulation in the home and the way homes are constructed. Yeah. So what we're seeing in the UK particularly, and I'm sure everywhere else, is all of the new insulation materials that are now being put into homes, which are now mandated, all have foil backing. So to make them better at heat retention, but it also makes them extremely good at radio spectrum blocking. It doesn't matter what type of spectrum you're talking about. And that actually will change the way Wi-Fi is able to work in homes and the way it works between inside and outside, and mobile phone signals not being able to get inside homes anymore. And I think clearly at the moment we have a bit of an energy problem across the whole of the Western world, and it's likely, I think, that we'll get even more stringent insulation regulations that are going to impact us further over the next few years.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it was so nice to have better insulation against the neighboring network's interference, but not against your own. If you're in your backyard and you still want the connectivity, right? Then it's a downside.
Or even if you do an extension on your house, and the extension has to be fully insulated. Now you've actually got essentially two houses stuck together.
Yeah. All right. Maybe a good question then to ask also, if you're already using some of these alternatives, because it sounds a little bit like we are thinking right now today that Wi-Fi is pretty decent, let's say, and then with Wi-Fi 6E, 7 coming, it's going to get better. So then by then, all we need is Wi-Fi. But with installation, maybe it's kind of a dead end, and we need some of these alternatives in the home in the long run anyway.
Martin?
Martha, yeah?
Yes, I wouldn't say necessarily an alternative. I think it goes with the design of the network. In the case of the 6 gigahertz band, what we are hearing are some stakeholders saying, well, you could have mobile networks operating in the upper part. And the argument is like, we could have access to the home. We think there is a good complementarity between mobile for outside and Wi-Fi combined with fiber for indoor. And that is justified because like about 90% of indoors traffic in Europe goes for indoor networks. Yep. So I would say like the best alternative is to have a very good performance, a very good combination of fiber and Wi-Fi. And of course, it will go with the design. You could have like many options, but I agree it's a challenge to make sure we have it. But that is still the best combination of technologies.
Yep. What about the CSPs? Are you using anything other than, let's say, CAT cables and Wi-Fi already in the network, in the home network, or?
We still need an alternative. So it is, I think, with installation for new houses, I think new houses will also be cabled up to the different places, and then you can connect boosters and local Wi-Fi solutions. So it's more a situation where you have existing houses where you need Wi-Fi up to the different rooms. Where we don't have cabling or internal cabling in where the customer that we cannot reuse from the customer. Today we use the PLC solution, and our experience is that with that PLC solution we can cover the needs. And so we don't have the MoCA. We're looking into the GHN for the solution that will follow the PLC solution, to use the more physical layers than just the power line. But today we have we limit ourselves to power line, but our experience is that this is covering all the needs that we see in the different places, situations.
Good enough for now, at least. Yeah. Okay. What about the others?
We do Ethernet 6E cables.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah. All right. One thing, if and maybe then Wim can comment on this one, because I was also thinking if you have these different technologies to do the transport, the management is becoming more complex, and let's say setting up the network becomes more complicated for an end user. If you have just a few access points, you can argue the placement is important, you can guide the end users a little bit. But then if you offer power line and Wi-Fi access points and maybe some other stuff, it becomes just very complicated for the end user. I think you said something earlier about you offer this happy home service. Is that something that you think then will get used more, or do you have other ways to help the end user figure out how they can get their home network properly installed?
It's a complicated topic.
Of course.
And of course efficiency and cost comes into play as well. So we need solutions that can be self-installed by customers. Although for first installations, most of the time it is a technician that goes on site. It's more for repair of swap situations where then we bring the customer to do it yourself solutions. But in terms of managing complexity, we really have a good solution that gives very good visibility of the in-home situation. So that enables us to solve a lot of issues remotely, which is quite efficient. Only up to the point where it's not helping, and the customer comes into a situation where he calls back and maybe calls back a third time, that we bring him to the happy house, to the happy house solutions. So it is a tiered approach where, of course, cost of the whole support comes as well into play. But finding a solution is very, very important, because if you after 2 or 3 calls, if you have to say to the customer, I cannot help you anymore, then you lose a customer. So you have to bring it really to a solution.
So Martin, go ahead.
Yes, I think going back to the segmentation that we started with, I think I can say we have 3 segments really. We have the professionals, I mean, that really are concerned about their own networks and really want to manage it themselves. Then we have some users, consumers that is okay with a retail solution, and that's fine. For some, this is actually probably the best solution. But we have realized now that this is not good enough for quite a few still, because of the increase in use and capacity and everything I was talking about, the 24 hours, 24/7 data transfer and management. So what we are doing now, we are developing a concept which is probably similar to what you said, where we're going to bring a guarantee into the service for those who chooses that. And we have developed a tool which we're now taking to the next step, which is, of course, into the privacy, and it has to be approved by the consumer and everything else, where we can look into their network and all devices being connected and give them advice on that. And the next step now is to bring that to the self-service, so all users can see their own picture from home. So they can go in and do the self-service. And the next step now is to move machine learning behind it, so we can give advices how to optimize on a self-service point. And that's where we want to get, because we want to show our customers what we really can see, and they can use it for those who wants to opt for that opportunity.
Yeah, but we're not going to touch too much upon that today. We will run out of time very quickly. But the privacy aspects is quite interesting as well, right?
Yeah.
You can see everything, you can do everything. It's a bit scary if I think of myself as a consumer. But it's kind of, in a good way, it's necessary that you can actually provide the service.
Yes.
Which some of the retail solutions, depending a little bit on how they're set up, but you have the customer relationship, right?
Yeah,
you want to maintain that and drive that forward. A question on back to Wi-Fi. I think Martha already hinted a little bit this. I was thinking, my background is also in technology, and when I heard that the 6 gigahertz band was coming and so on, I got very excited, because this is so much new spectrum. It's going to be so helpful. More channels available, cleaner channels, and so on. And I find it interesting that kind of since this December deadline that everybody was supposed to have this available at least, that there's not so much uptake yet. Now, I was wondering what your thought on that is. Is it something that people are waiting for the upper band, or is it maybe some of them now with the discussions waiting for Wi-Fi 7, or price related? Do you have any idea on how you see this? And then I'll ask the CSPs as well.
No, I would say the delay is part of the process itself. Some administrations update their national spectrum chart at some point, so they wait to make many updates at the same time in many cases. However, the discussion about the upper part is a very interesting subject. There is for region 1 of the ITU, so that is Europe, Africa, and Middle East, a discussion about if there could be an IMT identification for that band. And that is taking a lot of attention. Of course, we think that currently there are many other frequency bands that could be used for 5G. In particular, mid-band spectrum in 3.5 gigahertz. Europe also now has 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz band that provide that capacity for outdoor and also for private and verticals, private networks and verticals. So we think that the perfect combination there is to improve 5G deployments in those bands where there is already an ecosystem, and to open the entire 6 gigahertz band so we can all benefit from economies of scale. Part of the success of Wi-Fi is like chipsets are more affordable than, for example, 5G chipsets, and that is because we have economies of scale. So we really think that Europe should take that into account. Other stakeholders that are very interested on this subject are, for example, SMEs. They would love to deploy their own private 5G networks, but in some cases they won't be able to do it. So if they have very performant fiber connections combined with Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7, they will really have the opportunity to benefit for that digital transformation. Associations of AR, VR. Europe is very powerful in developing those new use cases. Startups. So there is a complete ecosystem in Europe that would benefit in the very short term of that capacity. And yeah, so that's part of the discussion. And we are trying to engage with administrations to explain those benefits and the need for the entire band.
What about the CSPs with, let's say, between Wi-Fi 6E and maybe Wi-Fi 7, where this is going? It's, Wi-Fi 7 is now early draft, so next year I think we'll have a stable draft and then there'll be some time. But I hear also some people starting to say, maybe we should skip Wi-Fi 6E, just go directly to 7. And I'm thinking that's a bit far away to wait for this wonderful 6 gigahertz spectrum to be able to use. But I wonder, what's your point of view on 6E and 7 and what's happening? Matthew?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So 6E, we are literally just about to implement. We've been trying to implement it for the last 18 months, but the availability of equipment has been extremely poor because of chipset shortages. So we are, we'll be literally deploying Wi-Fi 6 from July. So thinking that we want to go to Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7 for us seems somewhat premature. And I think there's quite big thing that worries me about some of the new potential standards is I'm not sure they're thinking clearly enough about the power usage in the home. We've been doing a little bit of testing on Wi-Fi 6 devices, and they are pretty power hungry devices. And I think that is going to be an issue. People will notice it because it is literally like having a heater running in your home 24 hours a day. This is a non-trivial use of electricity now. Yeah. So I think there's going to be some other issues that we maybe need to think about beyond just how can we do more spectrum and faster speeds. I think we need to think about how do we actually use that extra spectrum in a much more energy efficient way to give people faster speeds.
Yeah. The sustainability angle is definitely on the rise and so important. People notice, as you say.
Because loads of people now have these meters in their houses. I don't know if you've got one in your house, but it literally shows you how much electricity you're using all the time. And people are looking at those going, well, hold on, why is it just up? Since I got my new router, I seem to be using like 20% more electricity all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are thinking the same. We haven't decided, and it's a shortage of equipment, as well as we need to think of how we optimize the recirculation of the equipment we have, so we don't sustainability is also part of this.
You don't want to throw away all the things you already have. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are two topics on the table. So the Wi-Fi 6E, I first answered that, and then I come also to the sustainability. 6E debate is linked to the multi-gig offer. It is you offer multi-gig to the home, but then how can the customer experience it? And even in terms of usage, you can say, well, what will consume a multi-gig? We don't have it today, but the people that will buy it will want to see that they have a multi-gig experience. So one way or another, we should be able to show it. Or it's a multi-gig port on the device, or it is Wi-Fi 6E, so that even on Wi-Fi, the customer can experience in the speed test that he has a multi-gig experience. So for us, it links very much to that. It is, and we'll start offering the multi-gig, of course, in the higher tiers. So I think our plan is to offer that 6E, Wi-Fi 6E, in the premium box. So that's but very much to showing to the customer that he has a multi-gig connection. Okay, in terms of sustainability, in the design of our new box, and it was very high on the agenda also in our RFQ, the vendor selection. I think we came up with a box, a solution which is made of 100% recycled plastics, and also everything can be recycled also afterwards. Yeah. And power consumption of our Wi-Fi 6 box is 25% lower compared to the Wi-Fi 5 box that we had in the market before. So,
do you know how many watts it's using?
I cannot.
Too many, anyway. No matter what the number is these days. Yeah, I saw this as well. I think it's interesting. So I'm kind of, if I read a little bit between the lines, I think everybody sees the value of 6E and spectrum, but there's so many concerns: environmental, supply chain, cost, power consumption. everything around it makes it not so easy to adopt and say, let's just put this in a network and you have faster speeds and everybody will be happy. It's also not just about the speed. Wim, you said, right, the multi-gig, what are you going to do with it at some point? So let's focus on real use cases and take into account some of this other stuff. Livia?
Thank you, Martin. If I can build on that quickly, what we learned in the HomeGrid Forum membership, and it's really coming, from US, Europe, and Asian members that have been trying to accelerate deployments. Initially, and I'm talking about 8-10 years ago, we were looking at the deployments from one angle, from their own region. So it's really about looking at the use cases. This is what everybody's learning. And we are still learning in this direction because we started with deployments in US, and of course, houses there are wider, big gardens, walls are different. Also, in many cases, not so thick as in Europe, so you need higher coverage. Then, of course, you go to Asia, and you don't need that high distance, but you actually need to accommodate a highest number of devices in the same home. So in Asia, everybody has maybe 2 mobiles, 2 smart TVs, and then tablets and everything else, and some IoT coming into place. So you see crowded spectrum in a single house. So of course we had to look into developing things like the neighboring domains interference mitigation algorithm to deal with that point. And then of course Europe, you can say it's somewhere in the middle, but then you have different topologies of apartments in Europe itself with the single family unit houses. So it's really about the use case. It's really about what the user is expecting in their own topology, and service providers have this chance of talking to each other, and that is my recommendation in any of these association and fora that are fostering collaboration on talking about the use cases. Because the technology is there, and what we have been failing for so many years, and I come from a standardization background, ITU, ETSI, and working with technologists my entire career, but what we sometimes fail because we want to have future-proof and scalability, and that is great, but we sometimes fail in concentrating on deploying what we have now in our hands. Mm-hmm. The Wi-Fi version that we have now, the fiber version that we have now, and then, of course, combining with what we have, power line, coax, plastic, optical fiber, whatever, but focusing on this and making the best use of the ingredients that we have now. Standards are all there, and it's great, and it's important to deploy standards-based technologies and applications serving always, otherwise it's not scalable. And now we are focusing for the purpose of this panel on in-home networking, but think about the user that leaves its home, goes to an airport, or to the office, or to a shopping mall, and on the way to that destination, he gets frustrated because he wants to carry on the same level of experience, connectivity in the taxi, in the airport, in the shopping mall, in the street. So then we all as service providers are going to need to sustain that as well, extending the connectivity of experience outside of their homes, and go along with them and have the street lighting and IoT in the airports and everywhere else. So we have to make best use of what we have now in our hands, accelerate deployments altogether, while the industry technologies are getting ready and the regulators with the next technology of with the Wi-Fi 7. But we have Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E here, we have GHN, MoCA, we have fiber experts, we have everything to make it work now.
We've got lots of stuff. Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's very easy to look ahead and to see all these wonderful new things that are coming, and then wait. But the worst thing we can do is wait, because then we get nowhere. So,
exactly.
Martha?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Livia on that. It's like right now we have the Wi-Fi 6E ecosystem, we have the decision in Europe, so I think it's the right move to start implementing. I'm very glad to hear that you're already testing the devices and seeing how they behave. I think the replacement will come step by step, like for example, if you are deploying a new network, instead of getting outdated devices, it's the opportunity to get the latest routers and to have the new generation of equipment. But at the same time, I think the transition would come itself, like it has been in the previous generations, and it's not a reason to say like, okay, they have concerns about this new technology. I think that's the normal case every time we are improving to a new one. One short comment also about the consumption. Wi-Fi 6E is implementing something like device goes to sleep if there is no traffic. I think that is something that is intended to improve the energy consumption. Yeah. However, that goes also at the same time that users are requesting more and more connectivity, using more devices at the same time. So that's a trade-off. It's like technology is trying to resolve that, but the reality we are facing, and that was very clear with COVID, is like a huge increase in indoors traffic. So that's also something.
Well, maybe one personal observation on the power consumption is also it becomes more important to understand what you mean by the power consumption, because it depends on usage so much. And it used to be the case that you had sort of either something was in standby or idle mode, and then you have when it's active. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the difference used to be, if you go back long enough, used to be small. But it's growing, and now so much of the power consumption depends on what is the actual usage scenario. So I think this is also something as an industry we can do some work to figure out what is this typical use case. And now everybody defines typical different, so it's very difficult to compare, both on technology and also product level, what is the power consumption. We have the code of conduct in Europe, which is nice because it gives you at least something. But we probably need some evolution, because I think in on-state it specifies 10 megabit of traffic. And I guess these days 10 megabit is not so much. So maybe we need some work on that as well. All right, well, thank you very much so far. Before I move to closing, I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. Any interesting topics, questions, burning? No. Everything was very clear. Yeah, go ahead. Do we have a microphone?
Mike? It's coming.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Detlef Führer, HPE. Actually, it's more of a comment, I would say. I liked the story that Matthew was telling about people saying, oh, we don't need fiber, we've got Wi-Fi. Because I've heard actually the opposite story. If you talk to people, let's say, in charge of politics or policies, I would say, they don't think about Wi-Fi. They see gigabit fiber, and they don't think about Wi-Fi because it's actually like water from the tap. It's there, you don't think about what's behind that. So it's quite funny to see how certain elements are really just completely forgotten depending on who you talk to. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting interaction between what we do on the in-home, our committee, the in-home broadband excellence committee, and regulation, because there's a lot of dynamics there where the in-home network is becoming more complicated, and some of the regulation needs to evolve to cope, and indeed this interesting dynamic between fiber and Wi-Fi, and in the end, of course, it's both. And people think about it differently. It's good to be aware of this. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just add another comment to this discussion?
Sure.
Because we have some time. I just want to share an experience. It's going to be very short. But I was previously working in medical education and simulation. Mm-hmm. This was 10, 15 years ago. And we were developing these quite advanced patient simulators you may have seen in hospitals and education institutions, by ambulances or in the Air Force, what have you, where they train on complex accidents and complex patients. And you really need to monitor them virtually or wireless and to give as an instructor, and you need to have a distance and so forth. Really complicated software mechatronics in these patients. Human sizes. We brought these to hospitals in the US from Norway, and we were actually number one, the largest market player. And we went to different places, and we spread them around all over the country in the US. But then it found out that they couldn't work with them because there was so much disturbance in the hospital, all kinds of different equipment. This was Bluetooth. And in fact, they put up classes and so forth, and it didn't function. And then we could say to ourselves, well, that's your problem. You need to fix your in-house systems and so forth in hospitals. But fortunately, the company decided, no, it's our problem. So we took that position, and we upgraded the whole technology. We worked with the whole everything, the tools and everything else. We looked at the spectrum. We looked at everything we could do, and that changed the company to be a product provider to a service provider, because suddenly then we could start working with the hospitals. How can we provide service on top of this? We developed the service people to support them and so forth, and suddenly it changed the whole company. So I think that's where we are with the in-home internet. If we are not able now to take that position, to say we're going to help you if you want, it's a service. You have to sort of commit to it. Then I think we will not be able to really prove the value of what we're bringing to the homes, and that's I think it's our position, it's our responsibility.
Yeah. I think it's the part in-home broadband excellence about the excellence as well again. For in-home broadband, you might be able to say, this is your problem.
Yes.
For excellence, you have to say, this is our problem.
That's what I mean.
And figure out a way to fix it. Yeah. Thank you for that. If there are no more questions from the audience? Just round over.
Thank you to the panel. It has been a great discussion. I have a question with regard to the approach to the in-home experience as a whole. We have seen that different continents, they are taking different tracks. Europe has differentiated through GDPR, for example. From your perspective, what will make the European approach different for the in-home excellence? Thank you.
Any ideas? What makes Europe different?
Well, I could have a first stab if you like. I mean, clearly, as part of Brexit UK, which is no longer part of the European Union, I'm not sure that actually, whether you're in Europe or somewhere else, it actually makes any difference at all as to there being a unified approach to solving this problem for customers. I think ultimately it is exactly the same issue. Us service providers want to have happy customers. We want to have people who actually can just use the service we're delivering without having to think about it, without having to worry about it, without even talking about it, and it's just there for them. And I think all of us agree that that it has to include Wi-Fi now, because customers don't understand that Wi-Fi isn't part of their experience. So if that's what they're expecting to buy, if you don't sell it to them, you won't have them as customers. So I'm not sure there's a European solution versus a Middle East solution versus a South American solution, because I think the same issue of having happy customers applies wherever you are. If you want to have a successful service-based business, you need to work out what it is your customers need to have, and I think in each of the markets you'll have a proportion of these different types of users. Some who are very technical, some who are completely not technical at all, and you need to make sure that you've got something that fits each of those types of customer.
Yeah. Martha?
Yeah, I think one of the key principles is technology neutrality at some point. It's like giving the opportunities from the very high level, for example, at the Digital Decade Policy Program. There are very clear goals. Like, for example, I mentioned 1 gigabit per second for every household. But when you read the document, it was more about 5G for outside fiber, but there was not Wi-Fi. In the last versions, we have seen that they included Wi-Fi, and we think that is very positive, because it's like you are naming the technologies, and then you would give that flexibility for implementation. I wouldn't say that is exclusive for Europe. I agree with just what was said by Matthew. I think that it's a good principle to make sure that we recognize the role of all the technologies, and we don't give them for granted. It will need investment, it will need their concerns, it will need a lot of stakeholders to coordinate, and hopefully there will be also new improvements in that direction.
Yeah. I would, one observation I'd like to add is, it's very easy to consider, well, this has happened in America and this happens in Europe. Europe is so different. There's so many countries in Europe, and they are all so different in many aspects of how they deliver broadband, some of the regulation. Of course, Europe, there's some central management to Europe as well, but still so much individual stuff to consider and to deal with. Livia?
If I may end on that, it's a great question from the standpoint that Europe can only lead by learning from each other in each of these countries, because we have such an amazing diversity of topologies, not just languages and landscapes, but topologies, different topologies in terms of infrastructure in the house, outdoor, and so on, that it's really a recommendation and encouraging all the players, and I'm talking about, again, all the players at all levels in the value chain, to learn from each other, to look at their neighbors, what they have been installing, what it worked well, what it did not work well in terms of quality of service, and work together for sharing this experience. And this is what Europe can be strong in leading, because we have that diversity, which is to some extent more unified in Asia, and it's too wide in US, or not applicable, because it's the same big region, right? From that perspective of the infrastructure. But in Europe, we have that beauty, not just the beauty of the languages diversity, but the infrastructure diversity, that the mix of the cables and the latest Wi-Fi technology can play a role in leading and learning from that, and make the best use of that mix today.
Yeah, I like the idea. We need to learn from each other, right? That's a big thing. That's also why we are so many people here, is to learn what's happening and what we're all doing. Well, thank you very much. I think it was also a very interesting discussion. And thank our audience for staying until the end as well.